welcome to everyone who is here with us live for day 2 of NAP week. We had a wonderful day yesterday. Thank you to everybody that came along and joined us for our live launch, and to everyone who's caught up with us since over the last 24 hours. We've been absolutely delighted with the response to yesterday's session. And thank you to my speaker yesterday, to my guest, David Neffs, director of the Daily Sparkle, who are also our main sponsors for the week. It was lovely to sit and chat all things reminiscence with him, and also to hear your questions really and your comments. So thank you, all of you, for sharing your experience, because that's how we all learn from each other. We are streaming across Facebook and YouTube this afternoon, so please say hello in whichever chat is closest to you. Tell us what you're up to. Please tag us in your social media posts over the next few days. Those of you who were here yesterday will know that we had a mystery prize for social media yesterday, for tagging us and telling us what you were up to. And we had a fabulous winner, an activity provider from Brendan Care called Betty Wood. So congratulations, Betty. You are on your way to becoming a NAPA recognised activity professional. You're going to start out on your level 2 qualification. So very well done there. And we will be announcing today's winner a bit later on this afternoon. So do watch out on our social media channels for that. You can get involved in all sorts of ways this week. You can adopt our Twibbon, our NAP Week Twibbon. You can stick that on your profiles on social media, which is fantastic. You can buy a NAP Week t-shirt or hoodie. Those of you who were here yesterday will have seen I had my hoodie on yesterday. Or you can download a certificate of recognition for your activity provider, or for yourself if you're an activity provider. There's lots of different ways to get involved. Have a look on our dedicated NAP Week webpage on the NAPA website, and you'll be able to see just what's going on across the week this week. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to expect the rest of the week. And I'm also going to be chatting to Hayley Lewis, who is the director of Halo Psychology. Dr. Hayley Lewis is a psychologist, an organisational psychologist with a special interest in staff wellbeing and employee wellbeing. So we're going to be talking to her about the things that activity providers can do, really, to avoid stress and to avoid burnout. So I'm looking forward to that, to some of those top tips too. But before then, I just want to say a few thank yous. Thank you to our disco sponsor, Majestic Air, who have enabled us to make the online disco on Friday completely free for everybody to attend. And we've got lots and lots of people attending. I think over 100 tickets have gone so far. So please do get your ticket on Eventbrite as soon as you can. Get dressed up in your best 80s outfit and come along and have a boogie. It's for you. Thank you also to our supporting partners, Care England, the National Care Forum and Scottish Care, as well as all our live event guests this week. We couldn't do any of this without our members, without our supporters, and without our partners. You're all amazing. Thank you so much for all you do to support NAPA so that we can support you. Yesterday, we launched the NAPA Year of Connected Communities and our brand new toolkit for activity providers, all around supporting positive practice, reconnecting with our communities, keeping those connections with our communities going locally and nationally and globally. And we also gave away our 2023 activity planner for activity providers. We know that you all like to be organised and to plan your year way, way, way in advance. So you can download both of those resources from the NAP Week webpage, or they will appear as if by magic in the chat. There will also be another free resource today to take away at the end of this event. So please stay with us for a chance to download that hot off the press. We have a lot planned for this next 12 months, and everything we do, as you know, is in consultation with you, with our members, with activity providers, doing the work day in and day out. So please sign up to NAPA News if you're not already signed up, so that you can be aware as soon as possible of all the different ways in which you can get involved with our Year of Connected Communities. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my very good friend and wellbeing specialist, psychologist, Dr. Hayley Lewis. Hi, Hayley, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Hilary. Thank you so much to you and the team at Napa for inviting me back again. I'm looking forward to our chat, and hopefully we can help some people today.
I really hope so. Thank you. We've already had some questions come in, so that shows just how pertinent a topic I think it is today, and that we're going to be particularly, I think, around stress and burnout. We've had a couple of years of it, haven't we? So I think really being able to give people a chance to hear some top tips and to ask some questions is really great. So thank you. Do you just want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your kind of areas of special interest? I know you have many, and just what you do all day.
What do I do all day? So yes, as Hilary says, I'm an organisational psychologist. So I specialise in particular in leadership and management behaviour and how this impacts the culture and performance of an organisation, no matter if it's a small organisation all the way through to kind of global. Within that, as Hilary kind of touched upon, I am really interested and do research around wellbeing and resilience. So I've been doing a lot of stuff around resilience with organisations, unsurprisingly, over the last few years. And really, I think, just to share my own personal story, my own interest outside of psychology into stress and burnout and what it means to be resilient really stemmed from when I pretty much had a breakdown in one of the most stressful jobs I'd ever had. So this is back in 2012. I was in a job that I was out of my depth on, wasn't getting a lot of support. There was all sorts of kind of systemic stuff as well as individual stuff. And essentially, I went to a very bad place mentally and physically. And long story short, it took me about a year to find my way back. And that really I started experimenting on myself, digging into the research. And so my own story and journey I've since used to help many of the clients that I work with as an independent practitioner. So now through my own business over the last 7 years. And I think stories are what connect us. So I'm definitely not sitting here as an expert thinking they're perfect. I definitely have some battle scars, things that I've learned along the way that help inform my practice as kind of well as research into wellbeing and resilience.
Thank you, Hayley, and thank you for sharing that personal story, because I think it does help people connect, doesn't it? If it's not all theory, it's obviously you are an academic, you are a doctor, but I think having had that personal experience yourself of burnout, actually it makes it easier for other people to really kind of trust what you're saying. So thank you very much for sharing that, and for trusting us with that story as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I think for me, obviously at Napa, we're all about wellbeing. We're all about supporting the wellbeing of people who use care and support services. And one of the things that's kind of really struck me over the last probably 5 years, even pre-COVID really, was that we really were starting to talk about resilience and well-being and self-care. You know, they were terms we heard a lot, and I'm not really sure if any of us really knew what they meant initially, but they became, you know, there was a bit of there were buzzwords, weren't they, for a while, and they seem to kind of re-emerged recently, given the pandemic, understandably. Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because people are there's more long-term sick, or you know, that it's impacting on systems and businesses and organizations? Why do you think now there's so much more awareness?
I think a number of reasons. I think, as you say, the pandemic brought all of this stuff into sharp focus. There was very few places for us to hide anymore. I think it got any of us questioning what we do, how we do it. I think more fundamentally, what's really interesting to me is the World Health Organization has now designated burnout as an occupational phenomenon, and burnout in itself has now been added to the International Classification of Diseases. So that tells you how big an issue It is, I think, the sectors that I tend to work with, so I work across all sectors, but I tend to work primarily with the public sector, so local government, NHS, fire, police services. And I think, and we've seen it in the news, haven't we? We're seeing the continuation of this whole do more with less. And when we talk about do more with less, we're talking about doing more with less people. And I think we've all had enough, and rightly so. Being asked to work longer hours, but not for more pay, not for an improvement in conditions. I think we've reached a natural crunch point, and people are pushing back. People are saying my health and my family's health and my time with my family and for my time for myself isn't less important than my job. And so I think it's almost like a perfect storm of things that, as I say, really the catalyst was the pandemic for all of that, and for us being much more questioning and challenging.
Yeah, no, thank you for that insight. I think, working with those public sector organisations, as you say, now more than ever, is that tipping point, isn't there, in terms of people saying enough is enough. I need to take care of me and the people that matter to me outside of work, as well as the people at work. And of course we see that with activity providers. They're creative people, they're passionate, they're empathic, they are, they're an amazing group of people for us to work with. And that was, those traits are what make them really special. That's what makes them the great workforce and profession that they are. But we know that they are at risk of perhaps not always prioritising their own well-being when they're prioritising everybody else's. And I think, if we're going to talk obviously about top tips, but how can they look after themselves better? Where's a good place to start with this?
Yeah, so there's a few things I want to touch on. So there's the three main risks that I see to activity providers' well-being, and then the things that we can do to kind of mitigate each of those. So the first, I think, that I see a lot of, and I'm sure some of the viewers today will empathise with and experience themselves, is saying yes to everything. I think, when we're helpful, kind, empathetic people, that can be a blessing and a curse, can't it? And it can make we want to help others, we want to improve other people's lives, and it means that people seek us out. More and more people kind of want to work with us, and they want to kind of tap into that. And because we're helpful and kind and empathetic, we don't say no. And so one of the things that I teach my clients, particularly coaching clients in similar situations, is just a very simple stop and check technique, which is before you automatically say yes, just ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I going to say no to? So it's a bit like, I don't know if you fashion experts, like style experts, always say, if you buy a new item of clothing, take one old item of clothing away. Don't just kind of add to it. And I think it's the same for us with new projects, accountabilities. So just notice and catch yourself. It's just, you want to disrupt that habit of saying yes to everything automatically. If I say yes to this, what am I going to say no to instead? And it might be, if I say yes to this, it means that I'm saying no to meeting up with a friend on Saturday. And actually, I'm going to accept the consequence of that. So there's something about consciously and intentionally kind of handling that particular issue. The next risk to well-being is around having a complete lack of boundaries, which to some degree feeds into this saying yes to everything. And so thinking about the places that you could put some boundaries in place for yourself. So it could be things like not answering email after a certain time. It could be switching off my social media apps on a weekend to give myself that headspace. We know there's continuing research coming out all the time about the impact of always being on technology, always being on social media, on our mental health and well-being. So one of the boundaries that I have in place is I delete all my social media apps off my phone on a Friday night, and they don't go back on until a Monday morning. On those rare occasions where I breach that my own boundary, I do notice I don't feel great and I don't feel well rested. So think about, even if there's just one boundary that you could put in place to protect yourself a little bit more. And then the third thing that I see a lot of, particularly in the work that you all do, is around feeling guilt at not being enough, guilt at not doing enough, guilt at saying no, just guilt about all the things. And this is where practicing self-compassion can come in useful. So I know Napa has an Instagram account. If you don't follow it, you should. And I was on Instagram yesterday. I shared what we call the 5 pillars of self-compassion. So if you're on Instagram, you might want to go and check that out. But it was developed by a clinical psychologist called Chris Germer. And he says there are 5 pillars that we should be nurturing each and every day that helps us be self-compassionate. So there's the physical pillar, there's the emotional pillar, there's the mental pillar, there's the spiritual pillar, and there's the relationship pillar. And on that Instagram post, I've given ideas for each of them. But one of the things that I do with my clients is encourage them to create their own menu. So I've got a client I'm working with at the moment. She sent me a picture of it because she put like lots of colourful drawings on it. So she's created her own menu and stuck it on the fridge. And she's got ideas underneath each pillar, from the tiny through to kind of bigger stuff. And so depending on how she's feeling in the day, if she's feeling overwhelmed, she'll just pick a little thing from each pillar. If she's got a bit more energy, she might pick something bigger from that menu. But the fact is, she picks something from each pillar to make sure she's being her most self-compassionate that she can be. So that might be something to think about. And I've got an example of a menu that I'll share with the Napa team, and they can share it in the resources with you if you'd find that helpful. So those are my kind of 3 things that people can do and think about.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think what's so lovely about that thought of self-compassion is it can be something really little, but it's something that matters and that's meaningful to you. Because I think sometimes we do set ourselves up, oh, I've got to find a fortnight to have a holiday, you know, in the when actually it could be just, you know, something really small that you do every day.
Yeah. Well, and you touch on something really important there. You're not. So there's stress, there's acute stress, and there's burnout, and we're going to probably touch on those shortly. But if you've got to the point where you are in burnout, doing some self-care over a weekend, going on a holiday for a week is not going to resolve that burnout. Right. Because there's bigger stuff at play that's outside of you as the individual, which we'll touch upon. That's where the organisation has a part to play. And so, yeah, I'm really clear about this. If I'm doing sessions like this, or I'm working with clients, or I'm writing research, if it's got as far as somebody being burnt out, it cannot just be put at their door to resolve it. And it's not going to be sorted out by a nice weekend away to the coast.
Right.
It's just not.
No. And that is, then that's the difference with burnout. I think that's a really helpful point. Thank you for that, Hayley. And you just mentioned a little bit about the system. So what part, you know, do our employers play in all of this, and our managers play? Because, you know, it's very easy, isn't it, to lead by, we want to lead by example. So what sort of things do we might want them to avoid doing or saying, or, you know, in terms of their behaviour?
So I think it goes deeper than that, and it requires a big cultural shift in the company, whatever that company might be. In work psychology, there's a concept and a framework that we work to in this space called, it's not a very sexy title, but it's called the job demands resource model. And essentially basically everything should be in balance. And so the high demand, and you need a high level of resource to kind of balance that off. And job demands can be everything from the physical, so you might need to lift stuff like hoist people, the kind of complex, so you're having to design activities, you're having to be creative. There's relationship aspects that can kind of create demand, the relationship with your boss, the relationship with service users, with families. There's a whole host of things that we categorize as demands, and you need sufficient resource to offset that. And resources it's not just about the number of people that you have in a structure, it's also how supportive your colleagues are, how supportive your line manager is, having the skills and knowledge to do the work. That can sometimes be a big gap. And so what we see, having enough freedom and autonomy as to how you go about doing your work. And when we see those things out of balance, that's when we start to see higher levels of stress, all the way through to acute stress, and in extreme instances, kind of burnout. And so from an organisational perspective, I think there's a responsibility at the door of the leadership team to really get serious and be open to a conversation around, do our people have the resources they need to deal with the demands they face in their roles? Are we fully in touch with the demands that they face? And look, that's no shade at people in leadership positions. I've been in leadership positions myself, and we know that the higher up you go up a hierarchy, the more distant you are from the reality of the day-to-day pressure. So are you fully in touch with what it's like out there on the front line? And if not, how can you kind of get in touch with that? So there's something about reviewing the culture, reviewing the workload, making sure people have the support that they need in place. A wellbeing day here and there, or giving people free fruit, or a free yoga session, again, is not going to deal with bigger systemic, deeper issues. It requires leaders to have a good look in the mirror, be open to kind of really digging into what's it really like to work here, what works and what should we do more of, and what isn't quite working, as to how can we best resolve that in partnership with the staff.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. That's fantastic. Any other top tips for avoiding stress and burnout? I mean, you've given us loads there already, but anything to add to those?
Yeah, so I think one of the often the common misnomers that I see a lot in the media and online and across all walks of life is this notion of categorizing stress as bad. And that's fundamentally wrong. Not all stress is bad. Okay, we need a certain degree of stress in order to perform. So psychologists call this flow. When we feel suitably challenged, but we've also got the skill and support, we're stressed, but it's a good stress, if you like. We're getting that adrenaline in order to do the work or do the thing that we need to do. It starts to tip into kind of unhelpful stress when we're facing that challenge, but we don't have the things in place that help us deal with that challenge. So we don't have the skill, we don't have the time. There's all sorts of things that get in the way. And so you kind of want to reach that sweet spot of stress. We tip into acute stress, which is the stage before burnout. We tip into kind of acute stress. And we know the signs of acute stress. Acute stress are more very physical. So manifestations of acute stress can be like heart palpitations, stomach problems, headaches, like tension headaches. Those are clues that you are constantly in challenge mode, but you've not got the resources to pull upon to offset that. So that's unhealthy stress. And then obviously we then tip further into burnout, which is a combination then of the physical and the mental, the kind of psychological, where we just lose our mojo. We just don't want to participate in anything. We've kind of just given up. We just really struggle to be enthusiastic about stuff. And so, yeah, so for me, there's a difference between healthy, good stress and when it can tip into that kind of unhealthy stuff. So yeah, I just kind of, it's always really important to me, because I just think it can almost cause us more anxiety if we all think that all stress is bad. It's not. And also, our own experiences as individuals will determine what we see as stressful or not. So what you see as stressful, Hilary, will be very different from me, will be very different from some of the viewers today. And that's okay, because our life experiences, our knowledge, our education, all sorts of stuff will feed into how we perceive a challenge, and therefore the extent to which we're feeling stressed or not by it. And so there's another technique, or rather a framework, that I share with lots of my clients around the circle of control. Again, I shared it last week on Instagram, around this idea of lots of us spend our energy and time, very often very limited energy and time, focusing on things that are way out of our control. So, the news, the economy, war, the weather, lots of us focus our energy there, and it depletes us and makes us feel, ugh. And so the work that I often do with clients is to get them to focus inward on what we call the circle of control. What can you control in this situation? Well, I can probably control my response, what I say, what I don't say, what I do, what I don't do. And that can help people feel they're getting back on a more even keel. So again, I feel like I've got a sketch note for everything. I've got a sketch note summary of the circle of control that I'll share with Jana and the team, and they can share it with viewers after.
Brilliant, Hayley. Thank you so much. I really liked when you said as well about how individualized this is, that just because one person's stressed with one situation, somebody else wouldn't necessarily be. And that is because of a whole range of issues. And I think knowing your team and knowing the individuals in your team is a really important factor, isn't it? And your colleagues as well, because we can't make assumptions about that, actually.
Exactly.
It can sometimes be quite misleading if we do. Exactly. And of course, there are things, I'm sure there are telltale signs of stress and burnout, but actually even those will be very individual, won't they? It depends a lot on the person, what else is going on in their lives as well.
Yeah.
So
and what we've been brought up to, there's our gender plays a role, like there's generational differences, we see that a lot. There's cultural and ethnic heritage that plays a part as to whether or not you kind of feel comfortable sharing about how you're feeling or not. There's all sorts of things that play a part, and you're absolutely spot on, Hilary, around we need to kind of, particularly as managers of teams, we need to take the time to understand each and every person that reports into us, because they're uniquely beautiful and at times frustrating. Why can't everybody be the same? But uniquely beautiful and kind of individual, and we need to kind of meet them where they're at rather than take one size fits all approaches.
Yeah. And I think as a member of a team, recognizing that and also reminding your line manager about that don't make assumptions about my stress levels based on other people's either. I think it isn't just from the manager's perspective, is it? But knowing that yourself, that actually everyone else seems really stressed, but I'm fine. Doesn't mean, maybe I am stressed then. It's actually because everybody's will affect people differently. We have got some questions coming in, which is quite thank you. I'm pleased to say. The first one is from Abby. Abby says, I can't switch off when it's time for my breaks. They are always at different times and about 15 or 30 minutes. I work 12-hour shifts and I don't know what to do. This is a tricky one, isn't it? Long shift, that 12 hours.
So first of all, Abby, you're not alone. There's a couple of things I just want to draw your attention to, really, which hopefully will make you feel a bit better, and also take back a little bit of control. So I think we can learn a lot from our Scandinavian colleagues. So one of the things that I teach organisations, I'm always interested in, let's learn from what other cultures do really well. And so some of you might be familiar with this. In some Scandinavian countries, there's this concept called fika or fika. Apologies to anybody from Denmark or Sweden or places like that. Apologies for butchering the language. But in a nutshell, this is about taking that break. It can be anything from 10 minutes to 30 minutes where you have a coffee and cake with a colleague or colleagues, and those are mandated. So they use them in the Volvo factory all the way through to kind of national government. Those kind of fika or fika breaks are fundamental, and they do a couple of things. They give us a break, so they give us a bit of nutrition and a bit of comfort, but also there's that relationship aspect. We know that connection outside of the work you do together, so you might be having a chat about curry, for example, or whatever, is really an important aspect of work and what it means to have a happy work life. And so the fika or fika breaks, they tend to have a few of them peppered throughout the day. As I say, anything from 10 to 30 minutes. The other thing to think about is when you talk about breaks, Abby, what kind of breaks? Because there was a study that came out a couple of years ago, and I've been applying the kind of results of this study in experiments with some of my clients. So the researchers looked at the impact of different types of breaks on our working day, throughout our working day. So short, different types of breaks throughout the working day. So they tested groups of participants with 4 different types of breaks. So there were those who did only one type of break, and then there was a group that did all 4 throughout the day. So that was a nutrition break, so having something to eat, having a cup of tea. There's a physical break, so it might be you go for a walk around the block. There's a relaxation break, so that might be you go and get your head down, like go and take a nap for 10 minutes, or you listen to a funny podcast, or whatever helps you relax. And then there's a mental break. So you've got you might do Sudoku or Wordle or something that stretches a different part of your brain than your work has done. And then there's the relationship break, so that might be connecting with a colleague over a coffee, or it might be doing a quick FaceTime call with a friend that you want to catch up with. And the thing with these is, what the researchers found is peppering your working day with short kind of 10 minutes can be as powerful for us as the more traditional, I have to take an hour lunch break. And interestingly, lots of my clients who are all different levels in all different sorts of organisations really like that. I've got about 20 across very different organisations who've been trying this, and they much prefer the kind of little and often approach to the 10 to 20 minutes peppered throughout the day, but being much more intentional. Okay, I'm going to take a relaxation break mid-morning, and have a nutrition break mid-afternoon, or whenever your shifts kind of allow. So maybe rethink how you think about your breaks, Abby, and do a little bit of an experiment with it.
I think that's a brilliant point. And you know what, that sounds so much like the way that an activity provider would help and support someone to plan their day, you know, thinking about the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, the intellectual, and yet they wouldn't necessarily think about peppering their day in that way, structuring their day in that way. So I really love that, and it was a reminder to me that I haven't walked the dog yet today, so she'll be sat here with her legs crossed. But that's the only time I get out of the house for a little walk. The physical break, so important though, so important.
Really important.
Think about those breaks in that way, rather than I haven't had an hour for lunch. And again, everyone's different, but it's something to bear in mind. Great question, Abby. Thank you. There's another one coming in now from Gary. I find that planning activities is stressful. Before I know it, I'm having to plan ideas again. It's like a hamster wheel, and it makes me anxious. Okay, any thoughts on that one, Hayley?
Yeah, so the thing that I'm really curious about there is, are you able to kind of plan in thinking time, if you like? Because I've so many of us listening to this today, and I know I've experienced it myself, Gary. That hamster wheel when I worked in local government, it's very real, and so there's something about, if you know you're going to be asked to plan back-to-back activities over the course of a number of months, looking ahead in your diary, in your calendar, can you put in place some time, whether it's even if it's just a couple of hours, just that kind of break space where you're acknowledging and reflecting what you've achieved with the previous activity. We know, again, from research, but also the work that I do with organisations, that when we take that time to just stop and acknowledge our achievements, what we've just done, that can actually help us feel better, but also give us that boost to get ready for the next thing. And then as part of that kind of break space time, get yourself, do something for yourself to get yourself in the right frame of mind to be creative again, because that's the thing about creativity. You can't just turn it on at a whim. We need to have the right conditions to be creative, and one of the right conditions is we need a little bit of switching off time. We know that kind of doing mindless activities, switching off, can actually aid our creativity, and so therefore we shouldn't feel guilty about blocking out some neutral break space time. So have a look back, acknowledge what you've achieved, and then just take that moment just to do some mindless stuff. Have that mental pause, that physical break before you do the next thing, even if it's just for a few hours.
Brilliant, thank you. I love that. Brilliant, Gary. Another brilliant question. And there's another one. God, they're coming in really quickly now. What can I do? This is from a date. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name. What can I do to help the staff? I plan activities for the residents, but listening to you, I think it would be nice to do something for them too. So this is obviously either a team manager or a colleague that's thinking about other people in their team.
Brilliant question. And your team's really lucky to have a manager who thinks the way that you do. I say this to all the managers I work with: don't guess, take the guesswork out. Put so much pressure on ourselves as managers to have all the answers to everything. Ask your team. Tell them where your head's at on the back of what we're talking about today, and say, I really want to make sure that I'm kind of giving you the support for your well-being in a way that works for you. Let's have a conversation about what you would find helpful. Take the guesswork out. Ask your team.
Brilliant. That was a quick one. I'm going to go this one now. Again, is another home manager. So great, we've got the managers here as well today. Sorry, I think the two came in at once there. Which one are we going for? We're going for Tim. Tim says, do you have any ideas or tips for supporting male staff to self-care? It's not something we often do, and I find I am guilty of that. So yeah. This is a gender issue here, I think. Hayley,
yeah. So there's I'll give the link to the Napa team, and they can share the resources after. There's some brilliant organisations out there specifically geared towards men and male mental health and well-being. I was recently on a podcast called the Every Mind podcast. It's hosted by a guy called Paul McGregor. Paul's very well known in the male mental health space. So he lost his dad at a very young age. And his kind of whole life has been on the back of the fallout from his dad's unexpected death, and so his whole ethos, the resources that he shares on the website, the stuff that he talks about on his podcast, the guests that he gets on, is all geared towards male mental health and male well-being. So I don't have and don't always necessarily feel I'm best placed. I know there can be stuff around shame and guilt and pride for many men, and so finding spaces that are relevant for men is really important. So I'm going to signpost via the Napa team to the Every Mind website, because as I say, it's specifically geared towards men in the work, well, not just men in the workplace, but men in life, and kind of their mental health. So yeah, have a look at that when we send that through.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Hayley, and thank you, Tim, as well, for sharing that. That's, we appreciate your honesty, and I think it's important to raise these issues, isn't it? Because as we know, it can be difficult sometimes for men to talk about their feelings. So thank you for that, Tim. And this is from Flo. When I get home, I'm so tired, but I can't sleep. And then I wake halfway through the night. This is affecting my marriage and my performance at work. Please help.
Again, Flo, you're not alone. You're not alone in this. So again, we know there's a real power in how you end your day. How you end your day is as important as how you start your day. And in particular, how you end your day can help facilitate better sleep. So there's a couple of things I want to touch on. Think about how you end your day. So lots of us start our day with routines, rituals, habits, whether that's doing a to-do list, having a cup of tea. There are certain things we all do routinely at the start of our day or the start of our shift. And then when it comes to the end of the day or the shift, we're so relieved it's over, we just kind of go on and cook the dinner or whatever. But actually, there's a real power in bookending your day or your shift. And so one of the things that I often get clients to experiment with is end your day as carefully and intentionally as you start your day. So things I get them to do include doing your to-do list for the next day the night before. So we know, I always call that a bit like your USB, your data stick for your brain.
Yeah.
It actually gets everything out of your head. The second thing is note down what you accomplished that day. There's a wellbeing framework called the PERMA framework developed by Professor Martin Seligman, and the A bit of the framework is about accomplishments. And so noting down 1 to 3 things, don't have to be massive, that you accomplished that day, that you're proud of, can leave us feeling good. And show some gratitude. So thank a person or just note down something you're grateful for. And those 3 things can be a really good way to just bookend the day or the shift. And it can go some way to kind of freeing up your mind, and means it's less likely that then you're going to go into sleep worrying about work stuff, because it will come out in your subconscious. I have all sorts of bonkers dreams when I haven't done that kind of ritual. The other thing is, do you have a routine? We know from sleep experts, having a routine and rituals for bed helps prime our brain that it's sleep mode. So that means things like, I know it's very boring, but it means things like not checking your social media apps all the live long day or night, because the light affects our eyes and our brain. So either dimming your phone light or not looking at your phone, doing some stretching, having a nice warm milky drink, having a warm bath, listening to a kind of a nice relaxing book or podcast, or the Calm meditation app. They pick actors who have the most amazing voices to do bedtime stories. Idris Elba's my favourite. But there's things around, do you have a routine for bed? Because the more you have a routine, the more it regularly primes you that it's bedtime and you need to sleep. But if your routine, if you don't have one and it's all a bit random, you can kind of be a bit het up, and then you will struggle to sleep.
I think those bedtime routines are things, those of us who our parents would be absolutely, a bedtime routine is an absolute given, and yet for ourselves, the bedtime sometimes can just nod off during the news at 10 o'clock, or you fall asleep with your phone in your hand. That's the one I'm guilty of. And actually, you're absolutely right, aren't you, that we need the bedtime routine as well, just as much, in terms of switching off carefully and with that intention of this is the end of the day, whether that's the working day with your achievements and your gratitudes, or the day when it's time to go to sleep and sleep well. So brilliant, thank you, Hayley. This next question, this is coming from Jen. There is a big culture of going out and drinking in my organisation. I feel a pressure to join in, but I don't. And then I'm told I'm aloof and boring. I am in recovery and I don't want to tell my team that I can't risk my recovery by going out and being around people who are drinking. It's making me question my position and really getting me down. Yeah. Any advice? Again, thank you for sharing that one, Jen. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, because that's a really vulnerable thing to share. So there's a couple of things. The first is there anyone that you would feel safe to talk to in your organisation, first and foremost, whether it's your manager, whether it's a peer, because it can help you feel a little less alone and isolated, because I'm imagining that's how you might be feeling. The second is, and I know this, I feel a bit torn about this bit of advice, but it is what HR professionals often suggest in this kind of situation, is can you suggest other kinds of events? So it's not always about people going out and drinking. Maybe suggest going out bowling, like having a bowling night, or going to the cinema together, or going out for lunch together, which I know is easier for some than others. It depends on your shift. But there's something about, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be they can never go out for a drink ever. But likewise, it shouldn't always be that's the only way you all connect with each other. Are there different types of social activities that meet different people's needs? I talk about this a lot. So again, you're not alone in this. I was working with a public sector organisation. I was working with a really senior, it was a director of adult social care, actually, and they were the leadership team they were part of. It was pretty much all men, and it was a drinking culture, and that's where stuff got done. And the person I was working with was her religion didn't allow her to drink. She didn't want to drink, and she was a mum of a child in school. And so we did some work on suggesting different types of social activities, everything from people going out for a drink all the way through to stuff during the day, stuff that didn't incorporate drink. So I think it's incumbent on teams and managers of teams as well to have an array of stuff, but you can certainly suggest alternatives now and again.
And absolutely, and I think it's really important that you only share your information about your recovery when you feel ready.
Absolutely.
That's your recovery and it's yours, and your anonymity around that is yours. And when you feel safe and when you feel ready, you shouldn't feel pressured to share that information until that time is right for you. And so I think it's important, again, what Hayley was saying about, is there one person that you trust that you, but again, make sure that is, because once you've shared it with somebody at work. So, I think take your time on that one. There's no rush, is there, to socialize. It's not part of the job. It's lovely to get on with your colleagues, but it doesn't have to be part of the job. Thank you again for sharing that one. Thank you, Hayley. And I think that's probably all the time we've got for questions today. You've said there was so much in there. Thank you so much for all of those. It was amazing to hear your experience and your expertise. And I love the way that you also shared a lot of the current research as well. So thank you for that. I heard that, and that's really helpful, because it shows that yes, it's based on your experiences with your clients, but also that this is tried and tested, evidence-based stuff. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and expertise. How can our sort of viewers today contact you, find out more about you? Mentioned Instagram. Do you want to just say a little bit about where people can find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Instagram. And I think one of the team is going to share my handles. I have a website. The website is filled with free resources. As I say, the people that I love working with are across the public and charity sectors, and often they don't have a lot of money. But the stuff that I work on is so important, and so I want to give people access. So there's lots of free stuff for you to download and access, and videos and stuff. So feel free to kind of go in there and pillage. And by all means, reach out to me via social media if you think I can help in any way, or just to say hello.
Brilliant, thank you. And Hayley has very kindly donated a number of her videos for us in the shed. So Napa members can access through Napa TV in the shed a range of videos that Hayley's donated to us, and also a series of blogs that she's written for us as well. So there's lots of information for Napa members in the shed from Hayley too. So as I said, our time is almost up. Just to remind everybody to please come back, same time, same place tomorrow at 2:30. We're going to be sharing the results of our national survey, looking at kind of best practice approaches, ways of working between activity providers and catering teams. Food-based activity, nutrition and hydration is very, very important in the lives of people who live in care homes, as we know. And we've done this great piece of work with Lakeland Dairies, and we're going to be sharing the toolkit that we've developed and talking to Belong Villagers about their good practice model, ways of working between activity and catering teams. So please come back at 2:30 tomorrow. We also have on Thursday 2 more events. We've got a morning event with our activity support service around connected communities. They're going to be sharing some top tips based on their experience and some of the projects that they've been involved in here at Napa. So please join us in the morning for that. And then in the evening, we're going to be talking to our dear friends over the pond, NAP US in the States, about global perspectives on community connections. So what are the similarities, what are the differences? How can we connect with people internationally? And of course, keeping some of the tech-based relationships going that we've formed in recent years as well. And then on Friday, to wrap things up, we have Disco Tropicana. So please get your leg warmers out, get all your neon on, and come and join us for some 80s moves on Friday afternoon. I think Hayley might be clearing her diary by the look of it, joining us for that. As we've mentioned, we have a series of free resources out this week, something every single day. So do have a look on our dedicated webpage for that. This is today's resource, the Wellbeing Journal. We've put this together based on information, obviously, that's been shared with us from Hayley, some of her blogs, but also based on consultation with our activity providers. So they've come and said what they need and what would be helpful to them. So, you can get that today free of charge. So have a look at it, tell us what you think. Yeah, let's get writing. Writing's a helpful tool for self-care too. So we really, really hope that you enjoy using those resources. We will be announcing the winner of today's mystery prize probably in the next hour or two. So do keep an eye on our social media as well. But for now, a big, big thank you to Dr. Hayley Lewis for sharing her afternoon with us today. And we look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.